Chapter 26. The black obelisk materialized from nothing, with little fanfare, other than a strong gust of wind and a vague, yet deep sound of impact, as if something very heavy had been slammed into place. Black stepped out, stroking his stubble. He looked around briefly at the storm, then strolled to the fence that surrounded the veranda. From here, he had a clear view, right on time.
"Come on, Grandpa,"
he muttered. There was an eerie, faraway sound of a wind chime. Then a faint sound of angels, mechanical angels. Suddenly, a green, medium-sized Japanese pagoda faded in and out of existence a few times before solidifying. A distinguished-looking older gentleman emerged. I know. He wiped his face with a green handkerchief. I still can't stick the landing. He finished with a dry, English accent. Professor Green walked toward Black. He was about to say something when he was cut off by another beautiful yet artificial chorus. A red British phone booth phased from the ground up with a dim, suffused crimson glow. When complete, a short, wiry man in his 30s emerged. Professor Green opened an antique jade umbrella.
As I was saying, I'm only here as a favor to Saber.
Say that 5 times fast! The man in red cracked a smile.
"So,"
Black blurted out, getting his former self's attentions.
"All together now? We only have a short window here."
The man in red nodded and quickly paced at the scene below, joining Professor Green and Black, versions of himself that he shouldn't be able to interact with. The man in red put on a sangria-colored fedora. No, this is too soon! Damn it! He slammed his fist as he saw Mr. Blue laying very still in the rain. There was bright orange blood draining into the street. Calm down. Professor Green raised one hand. It'll take quite a bit more than 2 human projectiles to kill a Time Lord.
"Granted the morons don't take him to a hospital,"
Black grumbled.
"but that's not the point. There's a larger issue at hand. What is different here?"
The man in red and Professor Green both stared for a moment. The thunder roared in the distance.
Jade isn't here.
Professor Green offered. Black looked up briefly, perhaps concentrating, perhaps in pain. Then he focused his vision on his 2 former selves.
No, she isn't. And for that, I'm sorry. You're sorry. Everybody's sorry,"
the rain continued. Black breathed in heavy.
"Still, not the problem. All of our timelines have been altered. That's why the architect had sent you, Saber, in the first place."
Professor Green waved a hand at Black dismissively.
That'll still not help with the destruction of the temporal nexus point Earth solar system at the hands of Mr. Blue, about which you have not said one word.
He and Black turned to stare at the man in red.
What?
The Time Lord in crimson said.
Wasn't me. It was him.
He pointed at the wounded Mr. Blue in the distance, being tended to by Saber.
"You're closest,"
Black muttered.
Ah, for fuck's sakes!
The man in red threw up his hands. Rem. Professor Green slapped the handrail. Black nodded. He looked back and forth at Professor Green and the man in red. The rain poured.
"What happened on Vrem?"
Don't you remember?
Professor Green asked.
"It's been 400 years,
Black shouted.
"and that doesn't even matter if our timelines have been compromised."
The man in red popped his neck, peered out at his future selves.
No one has that kind of power. Deceit,
Professor Green said. Black and the man in red stared at him. Professor Green sighed, nodded.
I only remember because of, well,
he looked down.
That doesn't matter. Regardless, she was capable of accomplishing the impossible. An avatartis.
The Time Lord in the scarlet suit placed his hands on his hips and squinted at him.
You're telling me that after all this time, she's been coming to bite us in the ass now? That makes no...
Black snapped his fingers.
"Think, Red. Think. This is happening now. This is not the past for us."
He trailed off as he looked below at his second self, crumpled and bleeding, surrounded by chaos. The man in red blinked rapidly.
This is still another point in time, artificially created. Indeed, Professor Green said. This had to happen. The troubles of the children of Earth.
He turned to watch Saber pick up Mr. Blue. Black nodded.
When this is over, we all meet at the Endless. Even Mr. Blue.
This is highly irregular,
Professor Green protested. Black shook his head and rolled his eyes.
I don't care.
He slapped the handrail.
It's fine. I don't mind,
said the Time Lord in the crimson suit.
Happy not to have to start early. Have things to do, you know. Very well,
Professor Green relented.
But why? Yeah, what could we all have to possibly talk about?
Asked the man in red. The rain poured. The crowd in the distance screamed and the lightning struck out over the ocean. Black strode to his obelisk time capsule, his purge, and turned to stare at the two of his earlier selves.
Gentlemen, it looks as if we have ourselves a saboteur.